Daniel Hannoush, thank you so much for joining me today on the Cook's Table. This is a real privilege. I'll speak a little bit more to the honor that it is to have you on, but thank you for joining us.
Man, I'm pumped to be here. Thanks for the invite, Andrew.
It is pretty unreal to think that we finally made this happen, and this is an honor for many different reasons. One, I just found out that you are a habitual podcast decliner. So, according to for those listening, according to Daniel himself, he's declined many podcasts, and he said yes to this one. So that's crazy. It could just be an effort to. You didn't have a different motive here in this whole podcast episode. We'll see.
Not at all. You're a special guy. You're a special guy, and I believe in you. So honored to be here.
I appreciate that. Yeah. The other thing I'd say about just the honor of it, and just to call this out, I know you don't like this kind of accolade or this type of thing, but yeah, you are one of the most profound influences in my life in the business journey that I've been on. So I know
Mm.
I've probably expressed that to you in some version of the words, but just for to remind you of that today and say thank you for all of the investment that you've made in me. For those listening out there, I actually had a former career at the company that Daniel has started and led, Pandowealth, as you can see on his shirt, and we'll talk more about that. But that was a huge part of my journey into, particularly, it was so many things, but particularly, it taught me a lot about how a business is run in a healthy way,
Yeah.
with a kingdom mentality, I would say,
Yeah.
with a strong faith background, and it just stood in stark contrast to some of the other business environments that I'd been in prior to that. And I felt like I was so developed as a leader and
Yeah.
as a future entrepreneur, as now I've stepped out on my own. And it was unbelievable to have the thought partnership with you along the way, and for you to take a personal interest in figuring out where I needed to land, and then also have your support as I left. That I tell people that regularly. I mean, I talk about the story regularly, and people scratch their heads and go like, what are you saying? Like, there's no, like, so many people just don't understand like the uniqueness, and have never had an experience quite like that. And so I just want you to know that I appreciate that, and I appreciate the continued friendship. And I know we joke a lot about collaboration in the future and those types of things. You are a special friend of mine, and one I'm
Mm.
honored to have in my circle. And yeah, who knows what the future holds, so glad to be collaborating today.
Way to start this off with getting me choked up. So those are words of
Let's go.
affirmation cutting deep. So those are very kind. You're a special person, Andrew.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'd love to give the audience a little bit of a better idea of who they're talking to, and if you would maybe just start us off with a little introduction of who you are, what you're up to, maybe a little bit of a brief history. We don't have to go into detail right away, but brief history of how you got to what you're doing today.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I love building things. That's what I've come to realize is part of my identity. And I am an engineer turned entrepreneur. I have a lovely family. Ashley's my wife. Got three kids, 11, 9, and 7. We may need to cut that. Let me think. 2026. Oh my gosh. They're 11, 9, and 6. Sorry, Juliana. Um, so I get to lead Pando Wealth, and that's um, wealth management firm with the mission of growing wealth to empower purposeful living and giving. I studied chemical engineering at Georgia Tech. I got a master's in wealth management. I started a firm from scratch around 2015. And before I met my partner, Jim, and I'm sure his story will come up in this. And now we've got a team of 27 folks. We're location independent. I get to work from home. I get the flexibility of seeing my beautiful family in between meetings and breaks and whatnot. But it's a good life. I love to play basketball. I am a musician. I'm a creative. I was just playing the piano last night. I recorded a little fun song to poke at my team and just creatively expressing myself in that way. I serve at church on the worship team. I love to smoke barbecue and grill meat. And you'll see me on the Blackstone or the Big Green Egg or my Aaron Franklin smoker. But that's kind of a high level overview.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I can attest. You do have a beautiful family, and having spent personal time with your family, yeah, it's a you're doing a great thing in so many ways, in so many areas of life. And I know that one of the things that I admire about you as well. And I don't mean this to turn into like a yeah, we're gonna just worship Daniel right now. Really don't mean that for the audience. I really don't mean that. But I also just really appreciate Daniel. So I want you guys to know as well, those out there who are listening, how special this man is. But yeah, just well-rounded and leading yourself well is, I know, a huge priority. Something that you passed down to the team when I was working at Pandowealth, and something that I know you've developed a lot. And so to hear you even just go through all the different aspects of your life by design, if you will, is really cool. And I think it's something that people should take away. Those of us who are aspiring to entrepreneurship and thinking about, it's a broader. This may come out later. I wouldn't be surprised if you bring some of this into some other aspects of the questions, but I think it's a broader conversation to have around entrepreneurship other than just business sometimes, and so I think you emulate that really, really well. Um,
Have you
I,
shared with your audience your karaoke skills? I learned
well,
that about you, and are
we need to bring it
you're
back.
quite the singer.
Oh, the little nuggets that sneak out as I'm trying to interview my guests, and they turn it back on me, and they learn about
Sorry.
things. It's very funny. But no, one of the best memories of last summer actually was in the Cybertruck. That's the other thing about Daniel that you need to know is he's got a Cybertruck. This man's a technology fiend, and oh my gosh, is that new? That's awesome. Um, but yeah, the karaoke, that was definitely a highlight. I look forward to doing that again sometime. I think I honestly got to some skills there that I didn't know that I had actually in that car. So it was fun. But I love asking my guests the question of when they realized, the story behind when they realized they were entrepreneurial. So for you, what would you point to? Was there a moment for you where you thought, man, I think I'm meant to do this by myself, or build something that's not necessarily by myself, but like
Yeah.
uh, maybe that's too
Foreshadowing.
close
Yeah.
to home. But yeah, yeah. What was that like? What was that journey like for you?
When did I notice I don't play well with others? That was pretty early on. I wouldn't be a good employee. Yeah. I've honestly had signs very early. I can think back. Probably the most prominent was my landscaping days, which was before I had a driver's license. So I have to say that
Mhm,
was middle school time period. But took the initiative to create a flyer, come up with a name, come up with a word art graphic and put them in little clear sleeves so that when I took them out, they wouldn't get rained on. So got the binder clear sleeves, and we lived in a neighborhood that had hundreds of homes and third of an acre lots. So I could walk door to door, and I would put them underneath the mat. And that was my first stab at it. And so I accumulated enough resources to buy my first car. And I paid my way through college through similar efforts. But I think I exhibited those propensity. I realized I can make way more money for the amount of time. And I learned a lot of things like customer service, as a young person, knocking on the door after I did the work for their inspection, as well as receive their feedback and their payment when they're not there, following up with them, and when the machine breaks down in the middle of the lawn and you're trying to fix it. So there's a lot of skills, attention to detail, quality control that, yeah, middle school. I started cutting grass at my own property thanks to my parents before I could reach over the handlebars, which, yeah, but I think I've always had a knack for doing the best that I could, whether it would be grades or sports. I was always maximizing my potential in every area. So that in school was like all A's and all honors and AP classes and playing sports and serving on the worship team. And those don't necessarily translate to entrepreneurship, but there's always been that drive
mhm.
and always been that pursuit of excellence with the quiet confidence knowing, I guess from the landscape days onwards, that I can and probably will create something for myself when the opportunity arises.
Wow, yeah. Um, So it sounds like there is a lot of, like, just nature to it, and knowing you as I do, I think there is. What about nurture, though? Like, what did your parents do? Was there a story there that influenced you, toward knowing that you could do that even at a young age, you know?
Yeah, I think that the obvious thing to point to with my parents is they're I'm a first generation born in the US. So my parents immigrated to the US when they got married 10 days later, left their family, left their homes, left what they knew to travel to New York, where my mom was getting a master's in nursing. So my dad didn't have a job. So I guess from that standpoint, the grit,
Mm,
the risk taking, the pursuit of a better life, um, that's in the blood, and the hard headedness, the passion that comes from the DNA. So I can
mhm,
definitely say that. I would also say that there's hard times growing up from family of origin. So the nurture part of it, I think overcoming difficulty, family, like my relationship with my father. I want to honor both my mom and my dad in this conversation, but challenges growing up and overcoming them. In Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time, he dedicates portion of a chapter talking about a great statistical amount of entrepreneurs had difficulties that they overcame, and it's the navigating decision making and overcoming chaos that can lead to skills that are necessary, especially in a startup. So I
mhm,
definitely think there's both nature and nurture. Um, I had a propensity early on, after landscaping. I taught piano and guitar in school. I ran a landscaping business while I was getting my master's. So yeah, I think it started DNA, family of origin, overcoming challenges, and it just continued to feed. It's like a flywheel.
mhm.
I found success. I knew I could do it. The confidence was there. So yeah,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, as you know, I mean, I can resonate so much with the whole lawn service. The beginnings with the lawn care. I always call it a lawn service. I don't know if that's what other people call it, but what was the name you came up with when you were in middle school?
Reds handy. Reds. I mixed in pressure washing, so it went
Oh,
from Reds lawn care to Red's Handy Services, something like that. I had a
okay,
friend I recruited to join me. He was a fellow redhead, so we played on that brand.
nice.
Yeah,
Okay, okay,
yeah.
so fun.
And
I
then
I go ahead. Sorry.
in college, I started a different landscape with like professional crews and commercial shop and doing hotels, and that was HD Lawns
Okay.
was the brand there. How about yourself?
Yeah, I started with my brothers, and actually, if yeah, just to give credit, I guess, to even where the name of this podcast comes from, Cook's Table. It's a reference back to the conversation actually where um, we started our lawn care business, and I was 12 years old. My brothers were 11 and 10, so they just kind of were implicated along with me. It was my gas on the pedal at that point. But my name's Andrew. My brothers are Peter and Trevor, and so it was APT Lawn Service. That was as
Let's
simple
go.
as simple as it was. But yeah, really great times. And I was thinking back on the door-to-door sales aspect of it recently, like in
Hmm.
the last week, and you mentioned the flyers that you'd put out, and I think it's very creative to put some lamination on the flyers. That probably would have done us good at the time as well. That's like upper echelon flyer type strategy there. But um, yeah, like just the skills that develops in you, going up to doors, and it's a form of cold calling, kind of, and it there's a certain aspect of it that is really, I look back with just a lot of nostalgia on it, and I think, man, if I was ever down and out, I would love to go back to door-to-door sales. Like there's something to it, and obviously the right neighborhood, and you gotta enjoy it. But would you ever
Oh,
think
what's
about going?
interesting?
Would you ever think about going back to door-to-door sales if an emergency came around and you were like, nothing else to do?
Not the sales landscaping. You can put me on a lawnmower with some headphones, listening to a podcast.
Sure, yeah.
We had a zero turn here, and Ashley's like, "Why don't you show me how to use it?" I was like, "No, no, no, it's too dangerous. You don't want to. I'll do it." But what I think Andrew's interesting, even as I enter in my current profession, the landscaping days, the early entrepreneurship taught me so much about setting up the systems. When I had the second landscape business and I set up QuickBooks and I set up the website and I hired leaders and I vetted them and I dealt with insurance and contracts and payroll and, you know, 1099s when necessary and W-2s. Those skills are what helped us grow so quickly at Pando Wealth.
Mm,
When I was on another podcast, someone rightly pointed out, I came into wealth management as a career changer. I had no experience. My first job in wealth management was starting one from scratch,
mhm.
starting a firm versus working under and with other people. And there's stories there. But somebody rightfully pointed out, okay, I had no wealth management experience, but I had business experience.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's the other way around where someone may have wealth management experience, but they don't have the business experience. So
Yes.
I learned the profession in the masters and that work, but those landscaping days taught me so much for today.
Mm, mm. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's a different wiring as someone who also feels walks that balance between yeah, trying to be a specialist versus and having a CPA versus having a broader business acumen as well. I think it is a superpower, and it certainly has been for you. I can tell that for sure. Um, what do you think, going back to just your overall entrepreneurial bent and wiring, when you think about kind of getting into that, and as you've learned in the different stages along the way, it's looked different, I know, but what do you think appeals to you the most about being your own boss, owning something, being an entrepreneur? Maybe it's changed over the years. How would you answer that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Ultimately, what is an incentive for me is time and financial freedom.
Okay.
I think the early sacrifices, and it is that when you're starting from scratch, and I would say it took a pretty big toll personally, financially, maritally, yeah, physically. There's a big toll that was paid early on. But I'm glad that we invested heavily. We were imbalanced early and we've since right sized it. But the luxury that it affords now, like next week, I'm going to be a camp counselor for my son. And it's going to be 4 days. And my son wants me as his counselor, first of all. My wife's going to go as a nurse. My other daughter, Autumn, is going to be there. So 4 out of 5 of us are going to be there. And our fifth is going to be with Camp Mimi Bop Bop.
Mhm.
But that to me is luxury. Like I don't have to stress about time off. I get to be present and there's a shortage of dads being able to participate. There's limited number of kids that can go to camp based on the number of male counselors. And I'm like, that's real luxury. So entrepreneurship to me is the control over the time.
Mhm.
I get to produce a ton of value when I'm working, but the time and financial freedom and I get to orient my life around like there's a cohesiveness around personal and professional. When I'm working on personally for growth is interwoven into work. It's not, I've heard not like work life balance and work life integration. Like my personal why gets infused into the business,
Mm,
my personal passions I get to work on. So there is autonomy and that is appealing and there is control and that is appealing. But to fully integrate your life and for the business to reflect your values and your heart and to get to make decisions that optimize your mission and your passion without being constrained by another person's interest and not another person, like not partner to, I don't want to confuse entrepreneurship by going alone or doing your own thing as I love my 27-person team and my partner, Jim, but we get to collectively align ourselves with people that are on the same bus, going the same direction, caring about the same mission. And I get to affect that and to lead that, as opposed to if we were optimizing for something else, if we were optimizing for an investor's return, if we were optimizing towards debt repayment, or if we were optimizing to some other person's interest, we're going to make different decisions. So I get to make sure that the work that I do, my calling, my profession, my personal life, and my work life are all integrated.
mm.
And yeah, that's really motivating.
I love the word integration. Yeah, I feel like I'm learning so much about that in my own life. And yeah, totally makes sense. We've hit on a couple things along the way so far in the conversation about your wiring, and obviously there's a lot of nature involved here, but you came from the engineering world.
Mhm.
That's been a big part of the ability to build Pando, and from my own personal experience being on the inside at one point. What else would you say? And I know this is an area of shared interest for both of us. I know you've benefited a lot from some of the assessments that we used to do, and I certainly have. Um, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned about yourself, your unique gifting along the entrepreneurial journey you've been on, over the years?
That's a great question. And yes, we could spend the rest of the podcast
Right.
talking about
Come back
culture
and do
index,
one on personality assessments. Yeah.
working genius. I said this, you heard that. Yeah, those are all key
Sure.
data that uh, I never paid attention to those growing up. I resisted them. I never wanted to be put in a box. In my mind, I can be whatever I need to be. I
Mm,
will be whatever I need to be. Don't define me. Don't tell me what I'm good at. Again, naively, I can do a lot of things. The reality is, in my wisdom, that's not true completely. And resting in who God made me to be is something that in my 38 years now I'm seeing the fruits of, and I get to lead out of that. Rest in who God made you to be. Culture Index will say that I'm 60% entre- enterpriser and 40% architect. And that actually resonates really well because there's a big part of me that's build, gas, let's go, overcome the obstacles. And there's that 40% that is, there's memes where a normal person looks down the hall and sees a beautiful hallway, and a crazy person is like, sees the nail that's popped out on the side. And I have both. I have the ability to get really into the details and really have that perfectionistic, 120% is what I'm after and settle for 100%. But then I also have this gas build and let's keep the momentum and pace. So at different times, those pop up.
mhm,
I think I have a lot of grit, gas, stamina, stubbornness, intensity, but yet there's a creative side to me that I've learned that comes out, like the ability to express musically and surprise the team with a quick little recorded musical communication. That's part of who I am. There's learned skills of being able to listen and to interact with people and explore their highest and best. Those are, I think, learned behaviors.
mm,
My hardwiring would tell me that I am task oriented, achievement oriented, goal driven, and people are secondary. And my success has come from investing in those around me, caring for those around me. So I balance those out.
mhm,
Um, yeah, wonder and discernment are things that I've learned are what bring me the most joy. They come the most natural. So in recent years, leaning into that and bringing around me people that have the other giftings and not trying to do it all.
mm,
So
mm.
those are some things that I've been mulling over recently.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. I think one of my favorite elements, as you know, of my time at Pando was the element of the core value we had for better together, and that was something that was so underscored by our emphasis on getting to know ourselves as well. And maybe people wouldn't initially think that, it's like you got a lot of personality tests, and that makes you appreciate your team more. But that was a secondary benefit that I tell everybody all the time when I introduce them to certain assessments or whatever. It's like you may have a little bit of an identity crisis for a minute as you
Mhm.
understand, like, where you fall in relation to others,
That's
and
not
I
true.
I
Yeah.
I I I literally just had this experience with a good friend of mine who I gave him the working genius and said, "Hey, go take this and come back to me and let's talk about it." And he had an identity crisis because it didn't match what
He
he
viewed
perceived,
himself.
what
Yeah.
he thought of himself, right?
Right.
And then I just told him, I was like, I had the same thing happen to me. I continually have that happen to me sometimes. Um, it was brutal for a time there, but reality is where you want to live, and when you embrace reality like that, man, do you appreciate the people in your life. Oh my gosh, you appreciate the people in your life who make you better, who compensate for the areas that you're weak in. So yeah, no, that's really cool. I think the other thing that's come out recently, and I recorded a podcast episode, I think it was last week, that I'm gonna try to repeat back what the takeaway was and see what your thoughts are on this. But I think there's been this emphasis that I've put even in asking entrepreneurs as I've started this podcast and all the episodes I've recorded so far of emphasizing kind of the personality wiring and kind of trying to do an assessment of like what does it take to be an entrepreneur and like what kind of
Mhm.
wiring does it take. And I think I've joked with I forget who I was joking with, but I'd love to have some type of personality assessment integrated into my podcast guesting thing where I like
Yeah,
people
yeah.
take an assessment before they jump on here, whether it be like Culture Index or something like that, so that I can one get to know my guests a little bit beforehand, but also know how to interact. We know how important it is to like speak the language of the person you're with. But I've also just I'm a surveyor. I'm a investigator, on some level, and so I'm always just curious about what does it make up an entrepreneur. But I think someone challenged me last week. I forget the exact nature of the conversation, but it was just a challenge to me to be like, how much of it rests on exact personality traits and how much of it rests on um, um, your own perseverance and ability to learn and learning. I think the words of my guest last week, Rob Krechek, was um, your how did he say it? It was learning the way that you learn. That's the most important thing to do because then once you unlock that, then you can propel yourself into any domain that you want if you have enough grit and perseverance to do it. How does that strike you? Like, do you have a sense for, are there personality types that you would say, oh yeah, this is probably more aligned with entrepreneurship versus another? I know that's a really loaded and broad question, and I don't expect you to have the answer there necessarily, but it's processing for me. So
I think it's a you could take it a couple of different ways. I was gonna zoom out and say, I don't know that any one hard wiring leads to entrepreneurship. There are
right.
accidental entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
There's a fellow in another firm that I admire, and they're growing like crazy. And he would call himself not an entrepreneur, but he started a very successful business. So
sure.
I don't. I think you have to surround yourself with people that have the hard wiring and the wanted to help drive the business forward. I think perseverance is probably um, the trait that's not a hard wiring, but if you give up easily or you're discouraged or you're in it for the wrong reasons, you're going to burn out. Those are probably more predictors. But what I've learned recently, and okay, you take your hard wiring, you say, does that mean that I can't do something? Does that mean, oh, I'm not hardwired to be an entrepreneur? I think it's three things, and there's different frameworks, but it's your hardwiring, it's your North Star or your why, like what's your want, as well as your passion. And it's all three things have to align. And if one thing's off, there are ways you can overcome it. You just have to know that about yourself and realize, okay, if you if your hardwiring is not aligned with the thing that you want to do, you're going to have to overcome that in a way. Surround yourself with other people. If your hardwiring is there, but your why is not aligned or your passion, I think the other part of it, I'm botching it, but experience. So,
Mm.
like, what have you done? What is your education? What have you tried before? But it's not just hardwiring shouldn't put you in a box.
Yeah.
But knowing that about yourself helps you know how to overcome the challenges, right?
Hmm.
That would be my. I wouldn't want someone to hear, well, if you're not this, you can't be an entrepreneur. Clearly,
Right. Right.
look at
Right.
yourself, right?
Yeah.
You're
Totally.
you're
You and I
overcoming
are
it.
right. You and I are wired very differently. Yeah, for the audience to know. And yet here we are. And there's yeah. I asked that question of myself. It's like, what is that compels me into what I'm doing, and how am I navigating it? And
Mhm.
um, yeah, I also know I've had guests. It's been interesting to just do kind of a poll of the guests I've had on the show so far. Not officially, but just as I pick up, it's almost like a little business masterclass for me in some ways. But like just to
What's the
evaluate
pattern?
kind of
Yeah.
what patterns I see in the
Mhm.
people, and there's definitely people who fall into the like I just love what I do. I love my craft, and I happen to get forced into a situation where I'm an entrepreneur, or it just kind of worked out that way. And here we are. And maybe I got some business coaching along the way, and I was able to scale this thing. But I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur, right? And so there's a hundred different iterations or versions of the story,
Right.
which is really cool. But you mentioned North Star, and I want to come back to this. Um, because we ran on this book, Start with Why, in so many
Mhm.
ways at Pandowealth. That was my initial exposure to Simon Sinek's book. Um,
Great book.
what's your why? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Always curious to ask people that as well.
Yeah. One of the things that is exciting is mixing your personal why with your professional why. I think that's one of the advantages to being an entrepreneur
Hmm,
and setting the course of the business. So that's an advantage. For me, uh, at the beginning, why the industry? What's my why for the type of work that I do? When I was an engineer evaluating this profession, I knew I wanted to incorporate my faith. I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to pursue higher education. I knew I was a beneficiary of counseling. I kind of alluded to challenges in life. And even entrepreneurship has created a place where counseling has been so beneficial. And I recommend it for anyone, both
yeah.
for marital counseling and personal counseling. But you leverage the counseling as well as earn well and start my own thing. So those are some of the whys that I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew those were the things that were driving me. And so I was evaluating seminary, and um, somebody offered to pay for me to go to seminary. I was evaluating getting a degree in psychology and started a counseling practice. I was a big fan of Dave Ramsey and personal finance. And when I discovered the CFP, Certified Financial Planner, I was like, wow, I get to incorporate my faith. I get to start my own thing, pursue higher education. I get to counsel people. I get to earn well. I'm like, what better thing? So that's part of my why into the profession. But forging Pando Wealth, so like pressing on beyond my personal individual why, it's like we get to grow wealth to empower purposeful living and giving. And so I got to
Mhm,
craft that with my partner Jim back in 2020. And it was so clarifying. It's like, is it okay to build wealth? Is, a lot of biblical verses on that. And 1 Timothy 6:17 talks about how to live the life that's truly life centered on generosity. So s- landing on building wealth with purpose, purposeful living, and the generosity emphasis has been very clarifying. But what gets me out of bed, I've learned, is maximizing this mission that I just talked about for team members and for clients. It's not
yeah,
being the advisor, which is what got me into the profession. I listed those things out. But I just love unlocking people's highest and best. I love thinking about the right person in the right seat. I love thinking about where the bus is going, heading towards that mission and not veering off course. I love building the culture and the health of an enterprise where lots of people get to experience this mission far beyond just myself. And in general, I get energized about building.
mhm,
So those are my personal why. I mean, a great example is us floating in the lake and the pool for 4 days together, pondering your life's purpose and mission,
yeah.
keeping an open hand, encouraging you. You asked me, why are you doing this? And that is my most inspired work, even when it means launching you into this venture, which I'm so proud of you for. That's what gets me joy. That's what gets me excited. It's not holding on to people tightly. It's unleashing their highest and best.
Mm, mm. Yeah, you need to do more of that. I mean, I know you do it all the time, but I know you aspire to do more of that, even the way that you did it for me. For those listening, what Daniel just referenced is, um, yeah, I alluded to it at the beginning, but it was a profound experience of just like um, having a crucial decision making point in my life, that I was wondering what the next step was, if it was staying at Pando Wealth or if it was moving on to my own thing, and um, yeah, it was an invitation into the Hannoush family life.
You got to see
And
how CEOs just flutter around and,
yeah,
make a few phone calls, and
right.
that's what
Yeah,
lured you in. I got
we
you.
just we just drove around. Yeah, we just drove around in the
Singing
Cybertruck and
songs.
sang karaoke all week. But yeah, it was
Gotcha.
profound. Yeah. Yeah, but I'll never forget it. And I do think that is really cool to see how, yeah, I was a direct beneficiary of that why, and that yeah, passion of yours. And um Yeah, I think it's beautiful the way that you said that. Go back to the counseling for a minute. I'm putting you on the spot here,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I know that this is a real important thing for many people to embrace and come to terms with, and it can be a very difficult thing. And I asked
Mhm.
this because I've had recent conversations. One in particular
Yeah.
I'm thinking of with a friend of mine who is entrepreneurially motivated, and he happens to be an entrepreneur. I mean, I would say that this stuff applies to anyone who's listening, other leaders, other aspiring leaders who are, younger and kind of getting started. Even if you're older, honestly, I mean, heck, you never stop needing help, needing a lift sometimes. But I would love to hear you talk to your experience just a little bit. I mean, you don't have to go into detail, but maybe demystify it for a little bit for some people. Why would you recommend counseling? Give us a little more detail of like why that's important.
Yeah. Well, starting at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, I went you talk about the functional things in your life that what causes stress. I went 2 years without making any money while I was pursuing this transition when I didn't have investors or a long runway. It started with a year and a half of masters into wealth management. That's when I was running a landscaping business. I was working 80 hours a week plus doing the masters full time, not making the business was making money, but I was reinvesting into the cruise and trying to grow an asset that I could sell.
Hmm.
So working like crazy, not making any money. We get pregnant with our first child. We so I finished my master's, launched a business, sold a landscape company. Jake, my son, is born. What's funny is early in our marriage, we have this traditional mindset of I was like, when we have kids, you're going to stay home with the kids, right? And I'll work. And my wife Ashley has a doctorate in pharmacy, and God's called her to that, and she's thinking, I'm going to work part time at least. That's what God called me to do. As we approached entrepreneurship, God, it's a funny sense of humor where she's like, I think I want to stay home with the kids. And I'm like, I think you need to work, to help us. But that produced another pressure where I believe the design of our family and the desires of our heart, where I wanted Ashley to be home. I wanted to provide. Um, and she had to work. So she was working full time as a pharmacist where every other weekend she was gone. So our life was around her pharmacy schedule. And so I'm trying to grow a business from scratch, being full-time caregiver. We couldn't afford daycare. And I had a HELOC and I was making the payment and pulling the money right back out just to make things float. So a lot of pressure, a lot of hours, a lot of uncertainty. I mean, it's not a sob story. It's just the truth. This is where I gained 20 pounds. I'm stressed out, not sleeping well, a year and a half of into the business. Once I launched, my first paycheck was 27 bucks for 3 months of worth, top line. And I've got all the expenses of the business. I'm doing everything from scratch because I can't afford to pay anybody. So you can just see there's a high strain, a lot of stress, and a lot of pressure. And, our marriage took a toll because we know we're sacrificing, and it was a sacrifice. And so I'm so thankful for what God has brought us through, but that was a very dark and difficult time. And we knew the Lord was going to bring us through, and you know, we we trusted in Him. As it didn't look pretty, but we trusted in Him. And as we started emerging, and the business started becoming successful, and one of my first milestones was bringing Ashley home. It was such a beautiful thing, and it took until Autumn, my 9-year old, when she was born, uh, when Ashley was able to finally come home. So that's just kind of the journey. Several years in, you never know what the timeline for entrepreneurship. You don't know if it's going to work out.
Hmm.
But in that, there's an extreme imbalance on taking care of self spiritually, physically, emotionally, maritally. And so this is not even the first time I've enjoyed counseling. I needed counseling in former years dealing with family of origin stuff. I mean, I can get into that if you want as well. But entrepreneurship, we needed counseling as a couple to reinvest in our marriage. We were committed to one another, but we needed help. And, I think we should reduce the stigma for needing counseling. It's a beautiful thing. I think I recommend it now. And I recommend walking in the light. I recommend vulnerability, inviting people in. I have weekly accountability with two guys. One guy's pouring into me, and I'm pouring into another guy. And that's part of the journey. We need help. We need each other. And counseling is a beautiful thing. We need our faith. So counseling for me is also rooted in faith, just an outside perspective. to, yeah, invest in the life accounts that get drained
Mm.
in the journey through entrepreneurship.
That's good. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it needs to be we need to say it louder for the people in the back, in some ways, because I think people just overlook, or there's enough, like you said, stigma around it that there's too much fear for asking for help and those types of things. So certainly been a
And
beneficiary of it myself.
yeah, and the first round of counseling for me, I think is relevant as well. It's like, what's your motivation? What's your ego?
Mm,
What's your driving force? So for me, performance was the way that I earned love. Performance was the way that I, felt God's love. I had to be performing well. And so striving, 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 and, you know, operating here, but dying inside. Those were some of the early years of counseling. And even now, as I lead, it's private victories precede public victories. And we have to lead ourselves well before we can lead our teams, which rolls up to leading organizations. So I'm very much about how's your heart, how's your mental health, how's your marriage. And I will encourage people to step away from the business in order to make sure those are right. I think Tim Tasopoulos at Chick-fil-A um, helped me see that for the longest time, I was focused on Pando Wealth and professional success, neglecting personal well-being. And nobody could tell. At least I think nobody could tell.
mhm,
And this is even past counseling. This is more like 2 years ago and more recent. Of I'm successful on the outside. The it's growing. It's 10x in the last 5 years. But I knew things weren't well inside. And so my journey leading from the pulpit or leading from the CEO seat is taking care from the inside out, and inviting people accountability for how are you doing
mm,
on the inside. And
mhm.
that's uh, focusing on that, leaning into my relationship with the Lord. I think I've become a better leader, and we've
Yeah.
grown. Our culture's better when that happens. So
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's great. I mean, how much of counseling do you think? I mean, this is a little bit rhetorical too, but I mean, from my own experience, I feel like there's a lot of it that's just not necessarily getting fixed, but becoming aware, and then you can utilize that knowledge later down the line. I don't know that anyone actually gets fixed. Would you say that's a fair assessment of like awareness versus going there to get like I'm gonna get fixed today kind of thing, you know? Um,
sometimes it's hard to untangle the web of your life experiences, and
sure.
sometimes you need outside perspective to peel back the layers and realize how things are interconnected. Um, and there's certainly things like atomic habits that are helpful in, helping you address, not just your behaviors, but what are your beliefs. I think counseling, that professional help can help you see things and become aware. But yeah, this life is not, you're never going to be healed from the human condition. And so that's where I think walking in the light, regularly being known and loved for who you are, inviting accountability from brothers or sisters for people to walk with you. And you need that in your life weekly.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I don't think you're going to make it.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. No, I know we took a little detour there, but I appreciate your thoughts on that. I think it is relevant to the audience that I'm trying to reach and the younger generation of folks coming up. So, yeah, your life's a testament to that. Love that. What would you say in terms of other helpful resources? People, consultants, seminars, peers, books. I know you're a huge book guy. Maybe we could just even start there. Like, what are some of the top ones, top helpful influences you would say, hey, these must reads for the upcoming entrepreneur or the existing entrepreneur?
Yeah, I recommend it I'm a book junkie and a podcast junkie. And part of my hardwiring is to pursue facts, right? It's
Mm,
to wonder, is there a better way out there? So I think that some people don't have wonder, and therefore they're like, I'm not generally curious. I am insanely curious and I want to learn how other people have done it. I am not someone that's going to come up with something completely novel and new. I want to learn what's the best that's been done, and I want to emulate that in my optic. I want to apply the best. And so it's a constant pursuit of what is the best. And so that's part of my hardwiring. And so in that, it's podcasts, it's books. I mean, I am an avid reader for business. Some of my favorites are Good to Great, Essentialism. I mentioned to you, I believe recently, what was it? Founder's Dilemma,
Mhm.
as it relates to people that are starting a business and should you partner and not. Crucial Conversations is game changer. I reference that all the time and apply those skills. Start with why, Atomic Habits, getting things done, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, living forward. Those are short list of go-tos off the
Mhm.
shelf. Um, Mastermind groups are critical. So I really believe that the people you surround yourself with, um, and you might think, am I wasting my time? And it doesn't feel that way in every meeting and but it's the people that you invest in that are, there to challenge you, there to know what you're doing. It's so invaluable. I have 2 mastermind groups I'm a part of. One's a faith-based one and one's an enterprise one. And they call me on my stuff.
Mhm.
We have permission to not be the hero. So, and we get to learn from each other. And yeah, I really believe that you want to be constantly finding those that are doing what you want to do and learn from them.
How do you get into those mastermind groups, for those listening? Like, how did you end up
Yeah.
in them? Did you get invited or, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think I'm fortunate. I don't want to take it for granted because I know several have joined one based on this recommendation and it didn't work out.
Okay.
You got to get in the right group with the people that are motivated like you and they care about you more so than what they want out of it or more so than the content you specifically go through because content will come and go. I've been part of one mastermind group for 10 years.
Mm.
I've been with them longer than I've been with my partner, and they were with me evaluating my partner.
Wow.
And the profession has changed. One guy's now a missionary in Japan. One guy unfortunately left the faith and is not with the group anymore. Another guy, started a completely different business. So it's not tied necessarily to the profession, although that helps. But our care for one another and our vulnerability what's been allowing us to persevere. And we see each other annually on a trip. We're planning a hike around Hawaii at the moment,
Whoa.
and guys flying from Japan. We ask hard questions. We, know each other's families. So I think those are ingredients to successful mastermind groups. This one I got invited to. I was very fortunate. The second one I formed, and it's, I think professional organizations are places where you'll find other people that are interested in it. And then you got to stick with it and find the people that are willing to be vulnerable and that want to care about you so that it can survive. So the second mastermind group is several years, maybe 4 or 5 years deep, and it survived many transitions. So that's my encouragement.
Yeah, I guess I was curious from the perspective of, I mean, how do you come across them? If mastermind, I got one question I have is mastermind like a trademark term, or is it just like is it an actual like a business that they have cohorts of, or is it just like this is a group of friends who are all doing the same thing? We're gonna call it a mastermind group kind of thing.
Yeah, I think both exist. Both of mine are self-created, self-managed. Let's call it a mastermind group. But there are groups like YPOA and C12 that are
Okay,
professionally managed, dues paying, professionally coordinated. So if you're looking for a great you don't know where to go. Those are 2 organizations where you can have a facilitator and there's a
right.
curriculum and everything is structured. The two that I'm a part of are um, DIY.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really fantastic. And the other thing I would say about the books thing as a little nugget for the audience is, I have most of those books that you just mentioned on my shelf back here, my business bookshelf. I need to shore up my shelving. As you can tell, there's a few empty shelves there. But
I see them
one thing,
leaning.
yeah, and they're also leaning. I need a whatever they call it, a book stop or whatever. But one thing, yeah, that I really was struck by coming into Pandowealth, and I think one of the things that does make Pandowealth more successful is the fact that you invest so much in the learning and knowledge of your team. And what that looked like when I first joined was I got a stack of books in the mail, and I was told you need to read these books before you start. And
Not everybody appreciates that. You
right.
did.
Well, I did, but I actually never had a chance to read any of them because I was right off the bat in hot water, needing to get stuff done. But I do think that is such a cool um, habit that you guys have, and something that continually going through books as a team as well, investing in the team. that's a really cool thing. I don't hear oftentimes that as an experience of other people in other companies. So definitely putting it out there for those who are interested. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about specifically the Pandowealth and kind of what the deal is there. I have a couple questions related to what it's about and some of the philosophy around it. But maybe let's start with to give the audience kind of an idea of what it's about. Obviously, a wealth management firm. Well, what is it? What sets it apart? What sets it apart from other wealth management firms? We've already talked about the mission, which is so beautiful. We grow wealth to empower purposeful living and giving. I can say that in my sleep now.
I'm gonna say
Um,
we. We said
yeah.
we. I heard we.
Oh my gosh, it had to come up sometime. That's so funny. But it's historically been a firm that serves a Chick-fil-A community. So why Chick-fil-A and what else about it sets it apart?
Yeah. I can't not mention the faith component. We are not a Christian firm
Mm,
serving Christians by Christians. That is not us. There are firms like that, but it's in our fabric. It's in our DNA. We have a firm verse in Timothy 6:17 through 19. But you'll find that impacts our culture, our decision making, the way we give advice. So that's one thing that we're unashamed of. We don't beat people upside the head with. We have clearly defined core values, and that is something that I think is unique. I didn't think that way as an engineer. I thought that was a bunch of fluff. And I sat through several webinars. They're like, hey, work on your core values. And it wasn't until EOS and really a growth conference that forced me to start thinking through. I'm like, fine. And what's amazing is like it defines who we are. It
yeah.
defines our culture. It defines who we're looking for. We hire, fire, recognize, reward by these core values. There's, this concept that they're discovered, they're not aspirational. It's quite the process. So core values driven by that is in addition to our mission, I think makes us unique. We're pursuing we're protecting the golden goose. It's not always done, but if we're always pursuing profit, if we're always pursuing production at the expense of people, we're going to chew people up and spit them out. So we are passionate and we hold ourselves accountable. We don't always get it right, but we want to be doing what we love with people that we love, with time for other passions, making a huge difference, and being fairly compensated. So we're in pursuit of that. We ask our team about that. I think that's unique about our culture. You already know our mission. We've said it a few times. Yes, we're niche focused. So our growth has been around relevant and relatable talent serving a niche. That's how we've grown. We weren't always that way. We were a generalist. When I first got started, I thought about a niche. My wife's a pharmacist. Let's go through medical. Matter of fact, I found an early plan before I met Jen, where it was like a business plan, and it talked about some of the potential niches I could go after. And it's like, you don't know what's going to stick. And even as we started going after Chick-fil-A, it wasn't exclusive.
Mm,
However, one of the books, Good to Great, the hedgehog concept, what can you be the best in the world at? What are you passionate about? And what are people willing to pay you? So, ruminating on that thought led us to, hey, we can be the best in the world at serving Chick-fil-A. We can't be the best in the world advisor. We can emulate the best. So that was sort of the idea behind it.
mm,
We're now spinning and growing into athlete and mission, but it's still a similar playbook where it's a niche. It's just multi-niche now.
mhm,
Where can we find relatable and relevant talent and grow organically versus spending a huge amount in marketing, which is changing, but growing organically in niches. And that's been our playbook. And lastly, because there's 50-50 partners, me and Jim, and we do plan to open it up to path to partners for others. It's not a Kathy family business where it's a Hannoush dynasty. We've always oriented towards the 100-year mission firm. We want this
mm,
place to be around. That's very different than an exit that we're planning for or optimizing towards shareholder value. If we prioritize profit, if we prioritize an exit or enterprise value, we make very different decisions.
sure.
Um, yeah, that makes us unique and different, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah, take the audience back, I guess, maybe to the beginning of how you ended up in the Chick-fil-A niche too. If there's like a Chick-fil-A operator listening at some point and they've heard of you or those Yeah, I know. Bring them on. But they've heard of you. They maybe have heard other operators talk about you. What does set you apart from in the Chick-fil-A space? Why was that the niche that you chose?
Well, the why and what makes this unique, I want to answer this distinctly. The
Sure.
why, I would never be so crazy or naive to say Daniel can go after Chick-fil-A. I'm either relevant or relatable. That's not a reality now, nor was it ever. I
Right.
have been instrumental in helping make Panda Wealth relatable and relevant, but it started with my partner Jim and his 20-year career in Chick-fil-A. So I didn't say, who am I going to go after? Let's go after Chick-fil-A and then cultivate a plan. That would not have worked
Right.
in my experience. So Jim's network, my entrepreneurial spirit and systems and ability to build an enterprise, it's like gas to a fine-tuned engine. It was magical, and that led to our rocket ship growth. Same thing, we're branching into professional athletes. Why are we doing that? Well, we have two people on the team that are relevant and relatable. Daniel is not relevant in the least to professional athletes. I'm 5'9", you're 6'7", right? And I'm in no way relevant to athletes. However, when we have relatable and relevant talent, we cultivate that. That's tied to the mission, and that's the why. That's or maybe how it got started.
Sure.
What makes us attractive is that we are pursuing a one-stop shop. So we're multidisciplinary. We have a lot of things in house, from tax planning and prep, which you were a part of, to investments, to 401ks. We're doing entity services now, sort of bookkeeping and accounting, and financial planning. So all that's under one house. That's an advantage. We're fee only, so we're not selling products. We're not selling insurance. We get to give objective advice, and we're made for and by Chick-fil-A, right? With a lot of our team members having worked in Windshape or the restaurant, or at corporate, and some that still do, and some that have spouses. We are deeply integrated. We know the language, we know the systems, we know the jobs they need done, both functionally and emotionally. And that's an advantage. We're passionately pursuing doing those with excellence.
Hmm. It's great. That's great. Um, I just heard somebody say today, "Riches are in niches." I'm sure you've heard that phrase. Talk about the
Yeah.
niche, the experience with the niche, and for those out there who are contemplating it, what does it look like? How did it work for y'all? Obviously, it's worked really really well. But then I guess, yeah, pros and cons. Like, let's talk about the dark side of niches too. Like, do you
Yeah.
see a dark side? Have you felt that at all as well?
Yeah. Great questions, Andrew. So we started at zero. We started at negative. And really, the entity formed in 2015. And when Jim and I formed together, we had $3 million of assets under management combined, which
Hmm.
is like top line revenue of 20 or 30 grand. Top line revenue. Our expenses exceeded that. So we started with zero, and now we're, managing over half a billion. And we're on our way to a billion by 2030 and 5 billion by 2036. That all became possible because of this niche specialty. So before Jim, I was growing nice and steady, about 20 clients, at about 1.5 million under management, a year and a half in. And that's the common story.
Sure.
The niche allowed us to 10x in the last 5 years. We've grown like crazy, a rocket ship. We've had some challenges in the last couple of years, and that highlights the dark side. And we'll get into that shortly. But yeah, we have grown hand over whatever the expression is. I don't want to misquote it. Our explosive growth has been because we said no to everybody else and really narrowed in on our niche.
Mm.
Why is that relevant? Is it just marketing? I think jobs to be done is one way of looking at it. I'll get into that. The hedgehog concept I alluded to, what can you be the best in the world at? What are you passionate about? Or what are people willing to pay you? That's how you define your niche. That's how you can, in my opinion, how you can narrow in on what that is. What can you be the best in the world at? What are people willing to pay you for? And what are you passionate about? When you have that, it's magical. And that was Chick-fil-A for us. When you narrow an ideal client, you can enter in the jobs to be done framework where you can um, identify. So you've already identified the ideal target, but you can learn their functional and emotional needs. They don't wake up and say, I need a comprehensive financial plan. That's not in their vernacular. They don't get it. They don't understand what financial advisor even means. They have a job. I need to feel confident that the money's going to be there, when I pass. Am I going to be able to be generous? Um, is my family going to be taken care of if something happens to me? There's real jobs. And when you have an ideal client, a narrow focus, there's very specific jobs that your competitor's not going to know. Like if you entered into Chick-fil-A world and you didn't know the specific functional, emotional jobs of what they go through, you're not going to be relevant.
Yeah.
So what's the competitive advantage is that you get to then learn the priority, which of these needs are a priority or not a priority, and which of them are unmet. So when you can know what the jobs are, when you know what's a priority, when you know what's unmet, that's where you laser focus. What is your podcast on? It's that very thing. So
Mhm.
your marketing spend is much more effective. It's much more efficient. The articles you write, the service model that you produce, you target unmet, prioritized need of a very specific audience. And then you identify more of them and you do them better, faster, cheaper. Your competitor doesn't stand a chance. Quit
Yeah.
obsessing about your competitor, obsess over your ideal client, figure out who that is, learn these jobs, get the data, spend time with them, and then build your service model around their needs. And you will have no lack of success. You'll be able to charge more. You know, you build a moat around your business. And again, your marketing is so much more focused. Um, so that's the upside. Any question? I can get into the
Yeah.
dark side.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I mean, you didn't mention this, but oftentimes when I've spoken with you about this, you reference dentist advisors, and
Mhm.
the amount of times I've told that story to friends in the last as I've started out and in the last year as I've been building my own firm, it's it's in the double digits for sure, I'm sure, because I bring that up a lot about that friend of yours who runs Dentist Advisors who basically was and this is how I tell it. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but he was basically like, "Daniel, I'll give you anything you want to know about my business. You can have it all. I'm an open book. The one thing I will not allow you to have, and the one thing that my investors would not allow you to have, is the list of jobs to be done for our clients, the dentists that we serve. That's the one thing that is under lock and key." And I thought, I mean, that's just profound to me. I think that sums up what you're saying about the competitive advantage. For those listening who may be new to the concept of jobs to be done, who may be new to the concept of focusing on your like a client-centric approach in that way. I mean, we talk about client-centric approach all the time, I feel like. But like to get down to the nitty-gritty, I mean, I know y'all have a spreadsheet that you use that like literally lines out everything related to your ideal client. And you're never gonna let that go. You're never gonna, share that with anybody because that's the competitive advantage. I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
And then you speak to your clients in that way as well. When you talk about what you do for them, instead of listing out industry jargon, you're
Yeah.
like, "Hey, these are the jobs we do for you." And it's like, and we present them. Do these represent your needs? And they're like, "Yeah, yeah." And then guess what? When you have an ideal client, the time that you or what you learn about one is relevant to the
Right.
next operator, right?
Yeah.
You're not reinventing the wheel.
Sure.
If you don't have a niche, you what you learn about one client isn't connected to your next one, and it's inefficient, impractical. So the
Mhm.
value of the niche is that.
You're convincing me. You're convincing me all the way here. Yeah. It's great. What about the dark side?
Yeah, specifically with Chick-fil-A, specifically in that world, because we could have had the niche for franchise owners,
Yeah.
right? But we are hyper niche. We're Chick-fil-A. It's a small town, small pond, and they travel in herds. They're in the same Facebook group. So you don't have the diversity of a client base. And thankfully, it's not a single client. Like if we were contracting with Chick-fil-A corporate, that would be even higher risk.
Right.
So we do have 600 different clients. However, they're very connected.
Yeah.
And it's been the source of our success because when they find something they like, they will tell everybody about it and they'll put it on the Facebook forum. When a mistake is made, and we've made mistakes, guess what? The news travels fast. Or when a lower cost competitor comes in, it propagates so quickly. And so you have this herd effect. And so it's a double edged sword.
Yeah.
And so I would say faster growth, and some volatility in clients, and that's what we've experienced the last couple of years.
Mhm.
Um, and I would still invest in niches. We're just going to develop into multi niche, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be our diversification. The playbook still works, but we're going to grow with and beyond Chick-fil-A.
Were you surprised at the rate of growth that you experienced? Did that catch you off guard?
What do you think?
I mean, I'm assuming so. I think it would surprise most people. Um, but I guess my deeper question there is, assuming that you were, what was it like? I mean, what has it been like to experience such a fast trajectory, and almost ride the bull in some way? I'm assuming for that to happen, you said 10x in 10 years, or
We
give
10x in the last 5 years,
10x
and
in the
we're
last 5
planning
years.
to 10x in the next 10 years. Mhm.
What is that like? I mean, not everyone gets to experience that.
Yeah, I would say I'm very fortunate, and the more, especially the last couple of years, I realized that God's favor has been a part of this. And did it surprise me? The answer was no. I was actually quietly
Oh,
hoping for. It's what we set out to do from day one, and it's the whole enterpriser in me, the maximizing the mission. I have been building a base horizontally that's been very costly, that until the growth comes doesn't make sense. And
okay,
for
yeah.
those that I talk about species of dog, like I think you and I have talked, like, did I want an enterprise? So I expected it. I've been building towards it. I'm grateful for it. I think now I can honestly say that God's favor plays a part. And I think you can see a lot of successful people. Mark Cuban will say, "Hey, there's a bit of luck in this." Anybody who doesn't say that, I absolutely say I'm so fortunate to have met Jim when we did, and there's so many reasons why that shouldn't or couldn't have worked.
Mhm,
Both of us had applied at Ron Blue, and had we gotten the jobs, we would not be here. Both of us came from bad partnerships where if the partnerships had worked out, we would have been down a different path.
mhm,
And somebody at Ron Blue introduced us. So that is just God orchestrating that. And there's a million reasons why that shouldn't work. And we're different people. And we've navigated challenges over 10 years, but that I'm just saying, I don't want to take credit. I play my part. I lean into my strengths. I develop the people around me, but there is an element of right place at the right time, God's favor. So
mhm.
I expected it. I'm grateful for it. I'm hungry for more. And the team's like, why? Um, you know,
Yeah,
someone from my hard wiring. I'm a builder. I'm an enterpriser. It's a dream come true.
mm,
I now get to sit in the seat of building to maximize the mission, first of all, but that purposeful living and giving is for team members. If we don't grow, like, I get to create career paths. I get
mhm,
to see people bring their spouses home. That's part of their dream. Like, I see people, move where they want to move as a location independent firm, and they're growing wealth and their living purpose. I get to empower my team, and that's so energizing, even more so than sitting with a singular client.
mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, I think there's this question in so many aspiring entrepreneurs' minds. I'm gonna go on a limb here, but I think this is true of the balance between luck and you being fortunate, and you could call it the favor of God, and just like hard work and just getting it done, and that intentionality that you put into dreaming of a future like this, and kind of ending up where you are. Um, how important was it to prepare the field? If you understand what I'm saying there, prepare yourself for this level of growth.
yeah. Jim Collins, Good to Great. The throttle to your growth is your ability to attract and retain
Mm,
enough of the right people. And there's a lot of words very specifically in there from Jim Collins. So if you want to grow, you've got to invest in the infrastructure. And I know AI is coming in, and there's billion-dollar businesses with one person. I don't have any advice for that lane. I know doing it with people that I love, making a big difference. You're going to need people, in my opinion. Again, I'm not your you know tech entrepreneur. So from that framework, you've got to invest in people around you. You've got to, um, yeah. So that's one. Um, a framework helps.
Mm,
EOS was something that I introduced. It kind of along the lines of, have I expected this? Do I want it? Yeah. On day one, okay. When I found out about EOS Traction, a little plug, we were 4 employees deep.
okay,
Traction says its ideal client is 8 to 250 employees. So their ideal client. So we were implementing Traction as a, ahead of our time to lay the foundation, right? Invest in the infrastructure ahead of the growth. That's
mhm,
one thing. Invest in the infrastructure ahead of the growth. If you talk to Jim or the rest of the team, they'll see we've made investments, investments, investments. We forewent profit and we delayed gratification to reinvest into the base, into the ability to handle greater revenue and greater load.
sure,
So I think that's been we wouldn't be able to grow. We would be busting at the seams. Our rocket ship would be falling apart if we did not reinvest in technology, reinvest in people, and continue to attract and retain the right people
mm,
and unlock their highest and best, put them in the right seat. So I think that's, invest early in the people around you and get the right person in the right seat and the wrong people off the bus.
yeah, yeah. Speak to the difference for those out there who may be aspiring to wealth management or in the field on some level. Speak to the difference between. I know we've hinted at these topics this whole time, but the difference between being a solopreneur and building an enterprise. I think that's such a key distinction and something that people wrestle with. But you just see many people just embrace the solopreneur lifestyle. You obviously chose not to. You were given an opportunity to not do that, and it sounds like you've had a dream not to do that for the long haul,
Mhm.
building something like your CI cracks me up even that it's named Enterpriser because it's just so it's kind of a mirror of how you have ended up building Pandowealth, but yeah, what are the pros and cons of both, or what's your perspective on that? How would you counsel somebody in trying to make that decision? Because it's a big decision.
Yeah. Well, if you happen to be listening to this and you happen to be making that specific decision, I would definitely recommend you run to XYPN as
Okay,
an organization that can equip you much beyond this question and this meager answer. It's
sure.
a community, it's thousands of people have gone through this and gone through that same decision point. So if that's you, run over to XYPN, tell them I sent you. Um, you definitely need to be clear on the type of business. Begin with the end in mind is a
Mm,
phrase that I common. A lot of the decisions that I've made don't make any sense to someone who wants to build a different species of dog. So I want to hit on this species of dog thing
yeah,
because what's interesting is you take a full grown Chihuahua and you take a Great Dane puppy, and at some stage in the development, they may be a similar size and they may eat the similar amount of food and they may look similar. You get what I'm saying in
I
terms of.
totally do. Yeah,
And oftentimes people will say, you're at 5 million in revenue. You've got 500 million under management. Why do you have 27 people? Why are you investing in Salesforce? Why? And, this shop over here has $1 billion under management with 6 people and 50% profit margin. And to which I say, it's a different species of dog. And what
mm,
you're comparing to is a fully developed lifestyle boutique practice that's had 20 years and is steady state. And this is what they are. This is versus a very adolescent teenager enterprise that knows what it wants to be, but is in the ugly haircut stage, right?
yeah,
Is in the invest in infrastructure ahead of the growth. So, yeah, be clear about who you want to be, and you're going to make very different decisions. You're going to make different decisions on hiring. You're going to make different decisions on technology. You're going to make different decisions on whether you bring something in house or outsource
mm,
or partner, the number of clients, how many clients you can serve, what type of client. You don't have to be should all over. Some people, you should do this, you should do that. Figure out who you want to be. If you want to go it alone and essentially put work in a box and make sure it does not exceed that box so you can maximize your other life accounts, that's great. I'm in the foolish pursuit of both, making it a really big box, but also making really big life accounts. And at times it's painful. But when you know where you're trying to go, you're going to make different decisions today. And the longer your perspective. So for me, If I'm building a 100-year enterprise
Mm,
that's not looking for an exit, I'm making different decisions on profit. I'm not as worried about a 8 to 10% profit margin as opposed to 40% profit margin because I know that I'm investing in my base to give me the capacity towards where I want to be.
yep.
If I'm unclear, then you're stuck in the middle. You're making decisions that, well, these guys are doing it or they're doing it, so maybe I should do it. And in reality, there's a different species and a different set of assumptions. So I think you got to be clear. If you want to make a ton of money, you can do that in a lot of different ways. If you want to put work in a box, if you don't want the complexity of managing people, if you only want to serve a certain number of people, your business is going to look very different. For me, I want to maximize the mission for as many people as possible.
It harkens back to the conversations you and I had about what you're optimizing for. I hear that coming through loud and clear. It's like getting clear in yourself, like what do I actually want? What do I need? And your question to me that has rung in my ears since you first asked it, was probably like a year or two ago. It's like, Andrew, what are you optimizing for? And I think that's
Mm.
such a helpful question for people to be asking themselves. And hard to
Ooh,
know sometimes.
let's hit on that because that's a different scope and that's
Great.
very
Great.
revealing. So that comes out of the what is the founder's dilemma. Are you optimizing towards financial optimization or control? And that's specific to the person at the top and your personal convictions. But that's another thing to ask. If you're optimizing towards control, then you better not give away too much of it or, be careful who you partner with, or if you're going to join an organization where you give up the control, or you could have the financial mindset where you'd rather own a smaller piece of a bigger pie that's growing faster than you and you give up some control. So that's another good framework to think through.
Yeah. Reference the founder's dilemma for that. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, well, I wanna bring it in for a landing here, but I do want to ask you one other thing. And we've talked about team culture a little bit. We talked about knowing ourselves. We've talked about the assessments that would be done, the books that we read that you guys would have us read. I would love to ask you about it though a little bit more directly. Panda Wealth has a very unique team culture from my view, and having been on the inside at the time that I was. Um, and I think what you said, the ability to grow, being dependent on the ability to attract and retain the right people is true. And so many people, so many entrepreneurs wrestle with that. So from your perspective and based on your experience, um, what is it to build a healthy culture? What does it take? What would you recommend? What are some best practices that you've come across?
Yeah, I love this. This is what I'm most passionate about. And what gets me out of bed. And it's a system. It's not going to happen overnight. It's part of a comprehensive system. And I do credit EOS traction as a way to structure a lot of different components that help you define who you are, who you're looking for, which is the core values. First, who, then what.
Yeah.
Um, EOS traction gives you the framework for getting the right person in the right seat. If you don't continually pursue discovery with your people and unlock their highest and best and free them to the right seat, you're going to have disgruntled or people that are writing with their left hand or the opposite hand. That's going to affect your culture. So part of it is making sure you've got the right people defined by your core values on the bus, the wrong people off the bus. If you don't have the conviction to prune the vine or prune the branch, you're going to sour your culture. So that's part of our performance management system, which is part of EOS. So you have to be willing to face the brutal facts. That protects culture. You've got to lead with humility. And I do this from the top and I encourage it. Ask for forgiveness, admit when you're wrong. I get hot headed, I get passionate, and you better believe that I have tearfully asked for forgiveness when I've made a mistake. Allow people to fail, lead with humility. Um, don't punish people for making mistakes. Let's fix the environment, let's fix the process. When you have the right people and you have that feedback loop, when people make mistakes, you can fix the process. When you hire the right people and you focus on that upstream and you protect that, you don't have to worry about motivating people.
Mm.
I found I'm not very good at motivating unmotivated people. I can lead motivated people, but the good news is in this system of self Um, uh, when you have a healthy lawn, it chokes out weeds. When you have this system in place, you don't have to motivate people. You're hiring motivated, right people in the right seat who are saying things like, I'm doing my most inspired work. That is like, that's rain on my plant, when I hear stuff like that. And you just got to get out of their way. So, um, systems around hiring, you've got to systematically go upstream and find talent who represent your core values and get rid of people that do not exhibit the core values, even if they're performing well. That's going to protect. Crucial conversation. This is where I'll end on good culture. This has been a huge upgrade to our culture because it's not the absence of personalities that great. It's not the absence of conflict. It's how to deal with them.
Mm,
Even my partner and I are completely different on the spectrum of um, conflict avoidance versus conflict pursuant. But having a framework to keep short accounts, to be direct, to assume the best, expect the best, and want the best for one another, to shorten the lag time between a situation and when you talk about it. And we constantly say things, are you going to tell them or am I? So you don't receive, you know, news about someone and you allow this circuitous, no, we're going to be direct. I invite anybody to give me feedback. I know that's hard for the CEO, but you got to constantly reinforce that. But all these ingredients, it's like, how do you get a green lawn? It's not any one thing. It's a system, and you got to keep at it and you got to keep investing. You're not going to accidentally get it, and it takes a lot of work to protect it. But when you have it, it's magical.
wow. That was epic. I feel like if people could just if people listening could just apply just a third of what you just said, like they would see a marked increase in their company culture. And I think the company culture lives on in my own experience as I've come and gone from the company. Um, it has a lasting effect on those that it touches. If you do have a healthy culture, like it has the capacity to affect not only the employees themselves, but their families and their future lives, whatever that looks like, whether at the company or not. I can speak for that from personal experience. And I'm gonna share this story because I think it's so relevant, and hopefully it's encouraging to you. But just this week, I had a conversation with my best friend, one of my best friends here, where I live in Chicago, and he was talking about a work issue, talking about something he wanted to talk to his boss about, and unbelievable, just like how impactful it was for me to think back on my time at Pandowealth and the ability that we had to speak our minds openly, to speak the truth of how we were feeling, what the emotions involved were, what the truth of the matter was, kind of crucial conversations, kind of training that we received, and how default that was for me and how I was able to relay that to him, my friend, and say, hey, man, you should just do it this way. You should just approach it this way. Your boss is a reasonable guy. Like it shouldn't be a big deal. Just tell me exactly how you're feeling walking into the conversation. Like name the emotions, name that, you're a little hesitant to bring this up, blah, blah, blah. And he did it the next day. And it was just life changing. I mean, it was just unbelievable. It was a big deal. And, I don't think that many people get to experience that level of honesty and openness at their job. And I don't know. I hope that's encouraging. I think for the audience listening, like it truly is life changing if you can find a way to do that. And in order to start there, I'm sure you would say this, Daniel. You have to become that yourself, right? Like that tone at the top. That wasn't just a buzzword in business school. That's like the reality, especially with team culture. Would you say that's true?
Yeah. Leading self precedes leading teams, which rolls up to leading organizations. And for the longest time, I focused on the organization
Mm,
and the outward appearance of leading self was there. But when I truly took private victories precedes public victories, when I truly applied that medicine to my own heart and life, it's produced way more fruit. And the ironic thing is that you think it's like, well, I'll get to that someday. But when I focused on that, the team and the fruit in the professional sense blossomed even more so. So,
mm,
yes, you will not, you can't fake it forever. And if you neglect embodying, if you're not embodying those core values, it's just, that's when it becomes the stuff on the wall that means nothing. And that's what I thought of core values until
mhm.
Panda Wealth.
Wow, wow. Well, recently I've been ending podcasts with a look backward and a look forward. So I'd love to ask you the question, What are you most proud of as you look back and reflect on all that we've talked about, and just your journey in general? And then what gets you most excited as you look to the next year ahead?
Yeah. My prized possessions, what brings me the most joy professionally, we can speak to the personal side as well. But professionally, we've said it so many times in this podcast, but unlocking people's highest and best, being open-handed and to the point where you're winning people's sales away from you, just seeing God um, live out purposeful living and giving, even if that means elsewhere. It's what fills my cup. It gets me excited. Yeah. If without it, I wouldn't. You know, it would be very demotivated. So that having countless examples, and you're one of those treasured stories. There's several others where we cried together, we talked, we navigated very hard things. Sometimes that meant they stayed, sometimes it meant another seat, but sometimes it meant following God elsewhere. And it's like celebrating that. So I I want more of those mission moments as we continue to grow. I know we've made a lot of investments and I'm excited about the outsized return. But I'm excited about the team and the culture. I want to protect that. Um, yeah. Personally, I'm looking forward to capturing that time and financial freedom and giving it to my family. I'm excited about camp next week. I'm excited about the date. I was on a date this morning with my daughter. We went to Jay Christopher's, and normally we go to Crumble Cookie after, but every week I've got a date. I'm excited about taking the wealth that we've built professionally and the time and financial freedom and investing it in moments in my personal life. I'm excited about having the time and financial freedom to make sure I'm well as an individual, and to influence those around me. That's what I'm looking forward to. Panda Wealth, 10x in 10 years. So if you're in this podcast and this place sounds like you want a place you want to work, come talk to me. Drop my email.
Yeah.
But we are excited about serving Chick-fil-A, professional athletes, and those that are drawn to the mission to grow out to empower purposeful living and giving.
Mm, it's great. It's great. Mic drop. Daniel, you're an inspiration. I really appreciate your time today, and such an honor, truly, to have you on. This has got to be getting close to episode 30 of this podcast. So
Oh,
you're
good for
still in
you.
the initial stages, and excited to see and check back in maybe someday as things progress. So until next time.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate you.